I'll try not to mess up my ears too much.
Okay. Okay, well, let's give it a start here. Welcome to the Empowered Living Show. I'm your host, Lisa Mizels. And what this show is all about is having women come on, women entrepreneurs who have done something in their life to become empowered. And so they've gone from living one way to another way, and with through their lessons and insights they can help other people become empowered as well. And I know a lot of us have these situations that we go through in life, our life experiences, and we all have something to offer each other. And I think listening in to the guests speak about some of the things that they've learned in their life and how they help other women is really valuable to all of us, because then we don't feel alone. We feel validated. So that's kind of what this show is about. And I'm really excited today to have my guest Starr on. She's going to be talking about getting heard, three relationship keys for success. And so today she's just going to be talking about women's ability to get heard and how it really affects their needs, their ability to get their needs met and create the life that they want. And I know that this is really crucial. Being heard, being expressed, this kind of thing is really important. And she says, without the proper tools and perspective, you can end up making these things worse when you try to make them better. And then some minor shifts in your perspective can really create huge results in your daily life. So you don't need the whole world to be on the same page as you in order to get these things done, which is really exciting. I'm excited to hear about this. So let me tell you about my guest, Starr Shepherd Decker. She is an ordained spiritual and esoteric minister, and she's a leader in teaching women to live empowered lives through their work by starting with their relationships to themselves. After years of teaching the law of attraction and metaphysics through events, classes, and retreats, Starr has taken her wisdom and experience with deep inner work to the mompreneurs who really need it. Her unique approach to relationships and personal transformation has inspired hundreds to make their lives more enjoyable, love-filled, authentic, and successful. Welcome, Starr.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So we were talking just a little bit before the show started about you homeschooling your children. So
So I have 3 kids, and I homeschooled 2 out of 3 of them. My 17-year-old and my 12-year-old. And my 12-year-old's actually never been to public school. He's always been homeschooled.
that's
Which is
awesome. I am impressed, and I give you many kudos because I don't know if I could do that.
Well, it's great to be in the Portland area here in Oregon because there's such a huge homeschooling community.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have to sift through all of the activities and the different kinds of classes. A lot of places will have special homeschooling classes during the day. And so it's pretty amazing. I don't think I could do it if I lived out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're in a good area for that. That's great. So tell us a little bit about your background and how your work started with empowering women.
So I was involved with the Portland Center for Spiritual Living. There's actually the Centers for Spiritual Living. Some of you might be familiar with them. And I started attending that center back in, like 2003, 2002, something like that. And I came out of a really bad marriage that ended, and we had 2 kids together. That's my 2 older kids. And it just, it left me feeling really alone, kind of stripped bare, and right on the verge of, maybe completely self-sabotaging my life because
Yeah.
it was really hard. And I started taking classes at the center on law of attraction and metaphysics, and really looking at the way that I was creating my own life. And I started just being really empowered and wanting to get involved and wanting to do something different. I was raised by some very unhealthy women that carried a lot of bitterness and a lot of burdens. And so I saw, firsthand from a very young age what happens when you don't deal with your stuff. And so here I was at this kind of choice point in my life where I could either define my life by this thing that had happened, or I could start taking responsibility and make my life my own. And so that's what I started doing. And so
Yes.
I got really involved in that center, and that's sort of where this whole thing began.
So for the listeners out there that may be thinking about that, being at that transition point where they could go one way. I mean, they probably won't be listening if they're thinking about going one way, but you never know, who's out there. So how did you come to make that decision that was like really pivotal in your life?
Yeah, well, I will be honest, I dabbled in touch. I played around, kind of saw where my edges were. But like I said, I had such a strong example of what not to be as a kid that it was really, clear to me. And in fact, at one point, I kind of saw these two trajectories of my life. And one of them was me sitting in a bar at like 50, telling the story of my divorce. And I know those people. And I just didn't really want this thing to, here I was 23 years old, and I didn't want this event to define my life.
Yeah.
And it was hard, and I was kind of a mess, and it wasn't an easy magical fix. It took me several years of really consciously doing this work to kind of get out of my brain fog and to not feel like I was at the verge of falling apart every moment. And Eat, Pray, Love, she says, don't give yourself permission to fall apart. Yeah. And I really like that, because it's so much harder to pull yourself up after you've allowed yourself to fall than it is to just keep holding on and not fall into the abyss, and really, and I will say that there were several people in the community who reached out to me in a very individual way. And if those people hadn't have reached out and seen me the way that they did, I don't know if I would have been able to continue on that dance between the self-sabotage and actually taking responsibility.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. Community, having being around the right community is really so important. And you do a little bit of that in your work, right? I mean, you've done retreats and.
Yeah, so I was involved in that community for about 14 years.
That's great.
And I became a licensed, what they call a spiritual practitioner. So I spent 5 to 6 years training, and I learned how to counsel other people in learning these techniques. Yeah. And so I was actually a licensed practitioner at the center for 6 years. And then as a practitioner, I put on events and led classes. I assisted in retreats, women's retreats for several years. And it was just incredible to get to re-give that gift that I had been given, to get to see those people and call them out and see the people that were right on the verge of maybe being swallowed by their own stuff, and let them know that I saw something bigger in them than what they saw in themselves. And that giving and receiving, which just kind of kept the momentum of growth going for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important that we give, because that's how we receive, right? That's the miracle. That is receiving. So tell us a little bit more. I mean, I can see why you might be passionate about helping women doing what you do, but tell us more about specifically why about women getting heard? I mean, what is that about?
Well, first of all, I think on a really global scale, women are kind of standing up more and more and having something important to say.
Yeah.
And after years of not really having a voice, or hundreds of thousands of years of women not really having a voice, we're still kind of in our training wheels.
I know.
You know what I mean? And so sometimes in our attempt to get heard, we can kind of stretch over into that place where we actually won't be heard, because we're kind of like, hear me. And so I know that I've been challenged with that as an activist and community builder, and someone that is kind of a fringe thinker. Getting heard is something that I've struggled with, and that I feel like I've come a long way. And so on the global scale, that's kind of my bigger mission. Like my sneaky mission is to empower women, as you were doing as well. But on a personal level, I've been with my husband for about 14 years, and there was a few years ago where stuff kind of got funky. Mm-hmm. And here I was, a leader at the community. I'm doing classes, I'm doing retreats, I'm leading events. I'm also a professional vocalist. So I was singing on stage on Sunday. I'm leading people in prayer and teaching how to change your life. And then coming home and not really feeling very heard in my marriage, and not feeling like I could move these pieces that were feeling really stuck. And that went on for almost a year, where I was kind of in this indecision of, is this marriage going to get me to my bigger vision? I have a really big vision of what I want to do in the world. And I was starting to wonder if these struggles were kind of pointing to, well, maybe this isn't going to last. Maybe this isn't going to get you to the place you want to go.
Right.
And it got really painful. I felt like I was kind of carrying a secret, because here I was a leader in this community, and I come home and I'm teaching something that I felt like I wasn't even practicing fully in my marriage, at least successfully. And so we kind of hit a low point where, divorce was on the table, and we were talking about it, and it was terrifying. And so I worked with a coach, and he really helped me to kind of hone in on three important things. One, I had to look at my part. I really had to get clear on how I was recreating these patterns, or keeping us stuck, or keeping kind of entanglements right where they were. And then two, I had to accept where I was or leave, because the place of waking up every day wondering was starting to affect my business. My clients were starting to dry up, and they weren't getting replaced. And I was having a hard time focusing, because I was just replaying the argument from last night in my head and trying to figure out how I could say the different thing. And it just got really heavy. And so working with this coach, he really helped me to see how I could have success in my relationship and in my business, and still feel like a good mom, and take really good care of me, which were, I didn't really think that all those pieces could fit together. And so I decided to stay. And that decision kind of changed everything. And as I heard me more, he heard me more. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But really, as I went through that, and then I realized how many, other mompreneurs are out there trying to do their good work in the world, trying to do the thing that their heart is calling them to do, and instead are sitting around replaying arguments with their husband, because their old tools that got them there are not going to get them to the next level they want, and they don't know the next tools yet.
Oh, that's so important. I mean, there are so many women entrepreneurs that have that fear of, what if I grow too much? Right. Exactly. What if I grow and my vision pulls me away from my husband? And that's really scary. That's really scary.
But we've worked so hard. We've worked so hard to build this business. We've worked so hard to build this relationship. And there's this fear that we could lose it all. And that's really terrifying. I mean, I was right there. It was like, am I going to have to get a job? I don't want a job.
Right.
Am I have to, be a single mom? I don't want to be a single mom.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, those are really, really important. I mean, those are real fears. I know that when I was feeling a little unsupported before my husband really knew what I was doing, because I didn't know what I was doing, and I couldn't clarify it. And so, it's like, well, what is this thing that what is this, hobby or whatever? And, before I started feeling supported, I lost my train of thought. But first of all, I wasn't being heard because I wasn't clear. Because I wasn't saying what I needed to say. And going back to what you said, it's so important to go through the discomfort of standing up for yourself. Yes. I just had my recorder in my phone this morning on a drive, and I was talking about this, because those things that we can get through are what makes us become the next level of who we need to become.
Yes.
Yeah. So, great stuff.
The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. He says that every conflict is really just a 10-minute messy conversation that needs to happen.
Right. And we stay stuck because because of the fear. We're afraid of having things be different. We're afraid of losing. We're afraid of being unlovable. Yeah. All those things. So where can women begin? I mean, if they feel like they're not being heard, where do you have them start?
Well, ironically, what I teach is that getting heard begins within. because, like I said earlier, if we're not actually hearing ourselves and we're kind of screaming at the world, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me, but we're not actually turning towards ourselves and listening and validating what we have to say as something worth listening to, then it's gonna, there's gonna be a disconnect in energy. People are very energetic, and we take subconscious cues a lot. And a lot of the reasons that people tune out is very subconscious. They don't have a specific reason. They're just kind of like, I don't know why, I just didn't hear you. Because we're like literally sending out the message, don't listen to me, it's not important.
Right.
So take ownership of the part of us that isn't turning towards us and listening.
Yeah.
And really making what we have to say valid, including our needs, including our fears, and including our emotions. Because a lot of women end up feeling really needy, and then they end up trying to get their needs met and then stop because they felt so needy and they just, and their needs didn't get met anyway. So they just stop asking. And then that builds up resentment. And same thing with emotions. When we go to share our emotions, a lot of women feel very emotional because that's what they're told. And in reality, it's because they haven't learned how to communicate their emotions in a way that gets heard.
And that's what you help with.
Projecting their own emotions, as negative or unworthy or inappropriate. And I'm here to say, emotions don't make sense.
Yeah.
Just don't stop trying to make sense of them. They're not going to make sense. Just make space for them and turn towards yourself and know that you're okay, no matter what you're feeling, no matter what you're thinking, and no matter what experience you're in.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So when those uncomfortable conflict type situations come up, you were mentioning before, some people don't know. They think that that's a sign that they should leave.
Yes.
They think that's a sign that that's no good anymore. How do you help people? How do you help the women understand what's really, is it their true gut feeling that they're feeling, or is it fear? Is it something else? How do you go through that? What's a process that you?
That's a great question. Well, my first key and my 3 keys is actually to listen. And when I say that, people are like, oh, listen to my husband, of course. Well, first of all, I actually mean listen to you. And second of all, listening requires the ability to differentiate between the different parts of us that are speaking. Because there's that fear part, that ego that wants to protect us and keep us safe and small and generally doesn't have our big vision in mind. There's that intuition that is the essence of us that quietly, gently nudges us in the direction that is in our highest good. We've got our inner child. We've got our perfectionist. We've got the critic. We've got all these different parts of us. And if we haven't learned some proper tools on how to differentiate those voices, we can get really confused. And we can think that we're listening to our intuition, we're actually listening to our fear. Or we can think we're honoring our emotions, but we're actually just shoulding all over ourselves. And so that's really the first step, is to learn. And that's what I teach. I have a 90-day group program where we get into depth on how to differentiate those voices and how to really tell who's coming up and trying to get your attention in there, and are they worth listening to?
Right. Great. That sounds awesome. So that's the first key, is listening. What's the second key?
So the second key is understanding. And there's a lot to that. I actually go into 4 different pieces of the understanding, but it's really understanding about how the universe actually does get our needs met. I go a little bit into law of attraction metaphysics on how the universe actually works with us. And it's not so much positive thinking. We can get a little bit into that, think positively. And that's not really what I teach. Well, I do believe that focusing on the positive is helpful. I don't think that denying our quote unquote negative feelings is useful, because that which we're not willing to look at actually ends up being in charge of us and ruling the choices that we make in a really unconscious way. And so it's understanding kind of how we work, how the universe works. And then one of the pieces that I teach in understanding is that we have to understand that people treat us how we teach them to. And the way that we teach people how to treat us is by the way that we treat ourselves, kind of how we talk to ourselves out loud when our people are around, kind of how we dismiss ourselves verbally, but also what we'll put up with from them. And so if we continue to say, oh, no, that's okay. Oh, no, that's okay. then people will think it's okay. And and if it's really not okay, then we need to understand that it's our job to speak that. It's not other people's jobs to kind of read our minds and figure out what's actually okay with us. And a lot of women will not speak their minds, and then they won't get their needs met, and then they'll just feel all this resentment that their needs weren't met, but they didn't
Yes.
actually tell anyone that they needed that, they needed anything in the first place. It's very funny.
I was just having a conversation with a family member.
Oh, I think I lost you. Am I by myself?
Oh, no, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, she's coming back. I guess this is where we see if I'm good under pressure. As we're waiting for Lisa to return, I will just say another key to understanding is understanding that we are an expression of the divine, and so that the universe doesn't make crap. And so when we can really understand that we're worthy, inherently worthy, that there's nothing inherently wrong with us, and that we're not broken, we can really bring a better part of ourselves to the world instead of fearing at any moment that we're wounded or that somebody might find out the thing that's wrong with us. And I'll go ahead and wait for Lisa to come back. I can see her trying.
Well, Starr, I don't know what's going on.
Oh, there you are. Well, I waited for a second and then I went ahead. Yep, I can hear you now.
Yeah, no, I heard you. I heard the whole thing. That was perfect.
Oh, good. You heard me like be quiet and then talk a little bit more and then be quiet again.
Well, I was going to say that I had a conversation with a family member the other day. You know, she was being very resentful of how her husband was acting, and it's like, well, we've trained them to be the way they are, and when we're resentful, it's because we haven't spoken up, and we've trained them to expect what we're doing, right?
Yeah, and it's not a blame thing. I mean, a lot of women can get defensive about that. It's just a matter of, is it working for what you want to create, or do you need to try something new?
Yeah. So what would you like? Give us a tip on what would be something new that they would try.
I would say, it's a funny tip, but if you're trying to break a pattern, literally do anything different. Like anything. If you always get crazy and speak up, like sit back and be quiet. If you're always holding it in, say the thing that's scary to say. Whatever it is that you usually do, just doing anything different will help you to break the pattern, and then you can get an internal guide as to what the next step might be. But it's really hard to see where to go when you've been stuck in a pattern for a long time. And the first step is really just to shake things up, just to get out of it in any way that you can. And you'll be surprised at some random results that might happen.
Yeah, and so what would you say if a woman feels really super stuck and she's not being heard, and she's real frustrated about where she wants to be and where her life is right now, and she doesn't feel heard in her whole family, what would be a key besides just breaking the pattern? Because maybe she wouldn't even know what pattern to break.
Right. No, that's a great question. I would say it's so easy to turn the light of focus out on everybody else. Well, she's not hearing me, and he didn't hear me, and I asked her for help, and she didn't hear me. And in reality, I would say turn the light of focus back on yourself every time. The key to this is being self-focused, because the irony, and that's why my third key is value, is that if you're not valuing yourself, you can't expect somebody else to. And
Yeah.
so you actually won't receive from others what you're not already giving to yourself in some way. And so a lot of places where women get hung up is they feel empty and they want the other people around them to fill that. And that's too big of that's something that you can ask for all you want, but you're not really going to get because you're not giving it to yourself. So there's no space for it. So as soon as it comes to you, you'll push it away in some unconscious manner because you haven't made space for it in yourself. And so really, even if it's just a tiny, tiny way, try to ask yourself, what do I need and how can I meet it for myself first?
Yeah.
Just a tiny little baby step to meet that need for yourself. And it doesn't mean that you end up being a one-man show or a one-woman show. It doesn't mean that I don't need anybody. It's
Right.
it's it's part of training other people how to treat us.
Yeah.
Because if you're not treating yourself well, you can't expect other people to treat you well because they're taking cues from you. And
Hmm.
so if you're not even listening to yourself, the other people around you aren't going to hear you either. So even just a tiny baby step, can you spend an hour with yourself a week
Yeah.
and give yourself something, a treat, a pedicure, if you like art, get crafty, or if you like nature, go out for a walk, something just so you feel valued, because that's going to build trust with yourself. And
Yeah.
really feeling
Yeah.
heard is about being heard by your inner self. And
Mm.
you can't build that relationship. It's like if a kid asks for something and then you continuously shut it down and tell it no, it's going to stop asking. And so
Right.
if your inner self continues to try to be heard and you keep shutting it down and saying other things are more important, it's going to be harder and harder to hear that voice. And
Yeah.
so just see how quiet you can get and see if you can tune in to your heart and ask it, what do you need? What do you need?
Yeah. I think a lot of the women that um, probably that you work with, and I know a lot of the women that I work with feel unworthy. I mean, it starts with feeling unworthy, and whatever experience or situation that has happened to them in the past, I think we all have something we carry through, but it's that coming from that place of not even feeling worthy enough to stand up for themselves and speak up for themselves and all that. So what you're saying about valuing themselves and taking some time is really super important. I always say, do something that gives you joy every day. Just to get that vibration up to, you know, can you hear me?
Yeah, and make sure you're doing it for you. Because
Yes.
I know when I first started this work, it still felt like something that I wanted credit for from the outer world. So I
Ah,
would do a thing and I'd be like, look, I did this thing for myself. Isn't it really great? And then it would be the validation from other people telling me it was great that would feel good instead of the thing itself feeling good.
that's
So
such
I
a good
would just
point.
make sure that you're doing it just for you. And maybe you don't tell anybody about it
Right.
at first, just to make sure that it's just for you. It's between you and you. It's a promise you've made with yourself for yourself.
I love that. Yeah, that's really, really important. And it's important to do it consciously too, don't you think? I mean, it's not like at the end of the day where you go, what did I do? That was for me. It's not like that.
It's more like a date. I
Yeah.
mean, in the artist's way, Julia Cameron recommends going on an artist date with yourself every week. Like go to somewhere just with you that would make your heart sing,
How
you
fun.
know.
Yeah.
And I think whatever it is, I know that you have kids and if you have a business too, and you've got a husband, there's a lot to juggle. I get that. But like I said in my core message, getting heard begins within. And if you want to see changes out here, you have to do some shifts in here first.
Yeah. So you want to mention those three keys again?
Yeah, ironically, they spell out the acronym LUV, love.
Oh,
Listen,
nice.
understand, and value. It's
Great.
really learning to listen to yourself and differentiate those different parts of yourself that you're listening to so that you know whether or not you should listen.
Yeah.
Understanding how the universe works with you, that you teach your people around you how to treat you. And like I said, when you were kind of popped off for a minute, really understanding that we are made of divine light. We understand that, then it's easier to value ourselves because we know that the universe doesn't make crap.
Yeah.
And so therefore, we can't be inherently broken. We might have beliefs that aren't working for us anymore, but at our core, we're still this bright, amazing essence of light that
Mhm.
is unique and that has something to give.
Yeah. I love that. And it's also comforting to know that you're not alone. Like if you need that, it's not going to give you validation, but it's always going to be there, that you've always got something that's got your back.
Yes.
To me, when I've gone through hard times with conflict and, you know, being scared to step out and do something different, that's where my confidence comes from when I don't have any, is that knowing that, yeah, it's all okay. It has to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right where you're supposed to be, even if it doesn't feel like it.
Yes. I love that. I love that. That's great. And so I hear you have a gift for our listeners.
I do. I do. You know, as I said, getting heard begins within. But the problem is, as you know, mentioned, that in our culture, we don't really know how to do that or what that means. And especially as women, we're so used to giving of ourselves to others.
Yeah.
You know, we're so generous and we're so loving and we have so much to give and we want to give and we want to give and we want to meet other people's needs. But really, we need to meet our needs first. And so if we aren't clear on how to hear ourselves and how to understand ourselves and how to value ourselves, you know, we really can kind of struggle, and that struggle will make things go in the opposite direction. Then we can feel really powerless or like a failure. And so that's the reason that I created the Get Heard 45-minute strategy session, which is really to get clear, you know, where are you now? Where do you want to be as far as getting heard? And then we can talk a little bit about what's in the way. And I'll give you 2 to 3 strategies that you can put into practice right now that will help you to shift this for you. And then, of course, if there's any other things that I can support you with moving forward.
That's awesome. Awesome. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to put your the gift URL and your replay and information about you, Starr, into the Empowered Living Facebook group. So that will be in the file there. So anybody that's listening can go to the Empowered Living Facebook group and get Starr's gift and listen to the
Huh? Get heard.
Yes.
Time to get heard.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, that's what empowerment is. It's standing up for yourself. It's being there for yourself.
And knowing that you're worth standing up for, like you said, really knowing that you're worth it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Women are changing the world. We are changing the planet with our open hearts and our compassion and our ability to meet people where they are. We're healing the planet. And we just need to make sure to remember not to leave ourselves out.
Yeah, that's true. And, you know, women are notorious for, like you said, nurturing. We're the nurturers. We take care of everybody else, but we have to prioritize ourselves, or there's nothing left for us to give. Right. And now I love this topic. It's so important. I
Ever.
I know, me too. And it's just, it's so exciting to watch this whole, like this snowball of momentum that's coming with women speaking up and really wanting to make a difference at the planetary cellular. Yeah. Just like this whole little and big way. Throughout the core of everything. And I love seeing this, and I love what you're doing. I think it's wonderful. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all that you do for everybody.
Yeah, thank you for letting me share. This has been incredible. And I love the work that you're doing. I'm so glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yay. Well, thank you very much. And we will talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks everyone for watching.
Bye.
Bye.